Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. I understand a number of people have got girls from Carleton University here in the house today, and so I think we want to introduce and give them a welcome. So we'll start with Ms. DeMoff, if you want to introduce your girl.
So I'm very fortunate today to have a young lady from Carleton with me, Caitlin, who's part of the Women in the House. So welcome. We look forward to spending the day with you, and I hope this gives you a great impression about what Parliament is like, and hopefully you'll consider it as a career going forward.
And to Ms. Vecchio.
Well, my ghost person today, she is on her way, Delaney Leach. She is a university student at Carleton as well, and she was awesome because she was here as part of the Daughters of the Vote. So it's great to have her back with us, and I wish them all the best. So she'll be here soon.
And Ms. Malcolmson.
And I'm honored to be shadowed today by Olivia Botelho, who's sitting here and looking very much forward. As she said, she's especially excited to be here to discuss this bill, which has been so high profile. So it's a great opportunity for future women leaders.
Excellent, and I'm fortunate to have with me Bonnie Guthrie, also Daughter of the Vote, and pleased to have her here for these proceedings. And I'm extremely delighted to be able to have with us Rona Ambrose, Her Majesty's Leader of the Official Opposition. And so, Rona, we're pleased that you're here. We're looking forward to hearing more about your bill, and you'll have 10 minutes for your comments, and then we'll go into our rounds of questions. So you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the members of the Status of Women Committee for all the great work that you do as the critic for Status of Women for the opposition. I watch closely. And I wanted to commend you right off the bat for the great report that you just produced. I thank you for all of your great efforts and all of your advocacy inside this House and outside this House. Merci à tous et à toutes de me recevoir ici.
Thank you to all of you for having me here this morning. This is an excellent opportunity to talk about a very important issue, an issue that is important not just to me, but to all Canadians.
When I was a university student, I volunteered in my spare time at a rape crisis center, and that obviously had a profound impact on me. But at the same time, I participated in a research project with another advocacy group called the Status of Women's Action Group. And it was an advocacy organization doing a lot of good work on behalf of women, but one of the projects they were working on was a court watch program. And this was many years ago when I was in university. But this project basically had volunteers like myself as a student sitting in courtrooms during sexual assault, sexual abuse cases, taking notes about how victims and complainants were treated. And it was shocking. It was shocking. The whole point of that program was to amass the evidence necessary to convince, at that time, I was in the University of British Columbia, the British Columbia government to mandate training for judges on sexual assault and sexual abuse. Well, here we are many, many years later, and we still don't have that. So, and look, some things have improved, but I think we have a long way to go. But some of the things that I saw in the courtroom were shocking then, and sadly, we still see these kinds of things. I remember sitting in the courtroom taking notes when a prosecutor was questioning a little girl. I mean, when I say little girl, I mean under the age of 12, about how she sat on a defendant's lap. And the insinuation was that she was flirting with this man who was in his 50s. But this kind of, these kinds of stereotypes still exist. These kinds of mythologies continue, and we see them in our courtrooms. And I don't have to, raise some of the high-profile cases that you've seen. And the truth is, the reason we know about those cases is because there happened to be a reporter in the room. And that's the only reason we know. But these kinds of things do go on day in and day out. And I think there's an opportunity for us to make a change. And we've seen examples where judges seemingly didn't understand the law or didn't apply the law. And it's upsetting. It was upsetting then as it is now. And unfortunately, as I said, it's still happening.
Over the past few years, I've seen in many cases of sexual assault problems, issues that made it so that the public lost trust in the judiciary. We want to ensure that the judicial system serves the people it is supposed to serve, especially women of victims of sexual assault.
The bill will require the Canadian judiciary to produce every year a report detailing how many judges have completed training in sexual assault law, how many cases were heard by judges who had not been trained, as well as a description of the courses that were taken. 2, it will require any lawyer applying for a position in the judiciary to have first completed sexual assault case training and education. And 3, it will result in a greater number of written decisions from judges presiding over sexual assault trials. But let me say also how pleased I was to see in your recent report taking action to end violence against young women and girls in Canada. I know that that report in particular touched on the need to improve training in the field of sexual assault law for the Canadian judiciary. So it seems that we're thinking along the same parallel lines. I just wanted to point out we really strived in crafting this bill to keep it effective, but also keeping our measures within the realm of the possible. And we know the first test it needs to pass is to demonstrate that it does not interfere with a free and independent judiciary. And we believe it passes that test. These are changes that apply to federal law that are within Parliament's right to amend, namely the Judges Act and the Criminal Code. We do expect and we welcome a debate on this issue, but in my view, it's time this debate was held out in the open and with representation from all sides. Every time another story of a survivor's case being mishandled by our court system hits the news, there are questions whispered and fretted over but rarely spoken aloud. So allow me to address a few of them early on and where I and my colleagues fall on these issues. Now, the question comes up quite often, does this bill unfairly tip the balance in favor of the complainant? And we would argue no. The training proposed in this bill is intended to level the playing field. An accused does not have a right to the use of myths and stereotypes about the complainant. Canada's laws against sexual assault are robust, and there is a responsibility upon our judiciary to ensure a clear knowledge of the criminal code provisions intended to protect complainants from those myths and those stereotypes. By increasing our judiciary's knowledge of Canada's sexual assault law, both sides benefit. Another question I often encounter, why focus on sexual assault trials over other kinds of crime or assault? Simply put, because these trials are in fact different. And our system already acknowledges that. Nous avons des tribunaux de la famille.
We have family courts, youth courts, and courts that are specifically aimed at drug-related offenses. I don't see why we should also not recognize the unique nature of sexual crime.
The Canadian Criminal Code in the 1980s took the important step of singling out crimes of this nature. I wanted to point out in the UK, our cousins in Parliament, where the Chief Justice actually uses a system called, quote, a rape ticketing system that only allows those who have been trained in sexual assault to actually oversee these trials. So they're a bit ahead of us. Finally, while there is an assumption among the public that members of our judiciary are already trained in these sensitive areas of the law, the reality is only half true. Yes, there is training available. It's definitely not mandatory, and it is held over just a 2-week period, and it covers multiple areas of law, from contract law to criminal law. And given the low rate of trust Canadians, and specifically those who have encountered our criminal justice system in connection to an act of sexual violence, it's clear that more must be done. Ultimately, we want Canadians to have faith in their justice system. The judiciary, I believe, has not stepped up to ensure that their judges are all trained and do not unintentionally or intentionally re-victimize sexual assault complainants, or frankly any party involved in these types of proceedings. This bill will take steps to build a more accountable and a more transparent judiciary. And that's why we're here today, Madam Chair, so I look forward to having a discussion and to do my best to answer all of your questions. Thanks so much.
Very good, excellent. So we'll begin our round of questioning with Mr. Fraser. 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ambrose, for being here with us today, and thank you for choosing this topic for your private member's bill. As you referenced, it's something that's important to all members of this committee, and we did make recommendations, as you highlighted, to the effect that further training for judges is needed in our recent report. When we went through that study, we heard from, I believe, 99 witnesses, and one of the themes that leapt out of the testimony for me was the explicit need to consider the intersectional nature of gender-based violence. One of the things that we heard repeatedly was from every step, from the time a victim or survivor is assaulted until they go through the end of a trial process, there is a lack of the understanding of how gender-based violence can impact women from different backgrounds differently. The focus on judicial training is laudable, certainly in the bill. I, for one, think it could be further enhanced if we required that the training consider the intersectional nature of violence. Would you support any kind of an amendment to the bill that required judges understand how trans women experience sexual assault, how Indigenous women experience sexual assault, and other marginalized groups experience sexual assault differently?
Well, I think I'm open to anything that will provide judges with better training about gender-based violence. Look, I think at the end of the day, people, and I'm sure all of you know this, but judges are just lawyers who are appointed to the bench, and they don't come with all the training. In fact, we have lawyers, someone said to me the other day, well, it's the government's fault, they should just only appoint criminal lawyers. Well, that's not necessarily what always happens. It's not always just criminal lawyers that apply for the bench. So we have people that, have backgrounds in corporate law and oil and gas law that are overseeing some of these trials, and that's, that's not good enough. They need to have the training in criminal law, and they need to have the training, particularly, I believe, in these kinds of cases, because look, we know from research that's conclusive now that these kinds of crimes, this kind of trauma, especially at a young age, has a massive impact on girls and women. We know that women who experience violence are at least twice as likely to suffer from mental health and deal with these issues for the rest of their lives. So yes, there is a way that we can make this the system much more responsive and effective for women. And all you have to do is look at the numbers of women who actually report and talk to them. The ones, everyone knows someone who has gone through this, and rarely do we know someone who took it to trial. And even, that women don't even want to go to the police. Why? Because they feel humiliated, ashamed. Well, I mean, it should be the defendant, it should be the perpetrator that feels ashamed and humiliated. And yet we have a system that right from the get-go, women feel that they are treated as their character is under assault. So there's a lot of ways, and I'm obviously, to your point about an amendment, open to looking at anyway, but this would be, right now what we need to do is get the Judicial Council and the judiciary to admit they need more comprehensive training in this area, and
I'd suggest that some of the differences you might see is women from different marginalized backgrounds may not report at the same level that other women do.
I'm sure.
You mentioned as well that judges are just lawyers that are appointed, and the focus of the bill seems to be in part on providing training for judges or for potential judges, but not for sitting judges. Do you think that there should be a component of this bill that also provides training for judges who are sitting today and have issued bad decisions in the past?
Well, we were very careful working with the drafters to not infringe on judicial independence, and so unfortunately, Parliament can't tell sitting judges what to do. So, we tried to get around that by, first of all, making sure that those who are lawyers who want to be appointed to the bench, and we can do that. We have a mandate to amend the Judges Act so that lawyers who want to be appointed to the bench do have to undergo the training. So that is within our scope. And also the reporting items that we've put in this bill. That's another way to impose a level of transparency and accountability on the current sitting judges in the judiciary around the kind of training that's available and how many people have taken it without, directly mandating sitting judges to do this.
Sure. And I'm quite pleased that I would say, fortunately, we can't tell judges what to do, but I think we also have a responsibility, as we saw in the last budget, to fund training for judges, which I think is a very positive thing that would work complementary towards some of the measures that you've proposed. The short title of the bill suggests that, I forget the precise wording, but it suggests that it's about judicial accountability. To me, the object of judicial training is about justice for victims and survivors of sexual assault. Would you agree that, sort of as a general theme, the main purpose is not necessarily to hold judges accountable, but to provide justice for those people who are going through the system?
Well, I think what we want to focus on is making the system more transparent and, frankly, more fair. We're not looking to tip the balance in any way, but right now we have a system where there are judges presiding over cases and they're not trained, and that's not appropriate. It makes no sense. If you go through something as horrific as a sexual assault and you take it as far as to go to trial, I would hope that you at least have someone presiding over the trial that understands the law.
Thank you. And just finally, we've got a little less than a minute to go. You mentioned that mandatory training for judges was on your radar as an issue for years from your time at UBC, in fact. You also mentioned that some judges come in with oil and gas backgrounds, like Robin Kemp. That decision was heard in 2014. He wasn't appointed to the federal court until 2015. If this was on the radar for such a long time, why wasn't this dealt with in the last government when you had a seat at the cabinet table?
I've been asked that question a few times, and the truth is, it never occurred to me that they weren't taking training. I remember, when I started looking at my private members bill, I was actually looking at ways to amend the criminal code, potentially to find ways to make the current criminal law more effective for victims of sexual assault. And the more work I did with advocates, the more I realized that our laws are robust and they are good in Canada on sexual assault. So I started to look at the training, and I was actually started at the sort of the bottom, looking at police training, and it didn't occur to me that this actually and I remember saying to Moira, can you get a list of all the provinces that have mandatory training for judges? And there aren't any.
All right, very good.
I didn't know, so
thank you.
It was happy to move forward with this.
We're going to go now to Ms. Harder for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Ambrose, for being with us today and for bringing forward this important piece of legislation. My first question here is, the judiciary, it would appear to some that it's already self-regulated, and perhaps that a bill like this isn't needed. Can you perhaps comment on that?
Well, after the bill was introduced, I think it was the next day or the day after, the Judicial Council, who is responsible for some of this, made the point that we do have some training, when we might look to make it mandatory. That was a positive response, but I think what Canadians want to hear, that need to have more confidence in our judicial system, is in fact, we have very good comprehensive training, and here's what it looks like, and we've worked with experts to make sure it is the best possible training, and we're offering it, and we're not just offering it, we're mandating it. And we will make sure that before Chief Justice assigns a case, that the judge that oversees that case has taken that training. And I think that's what people want to hear. I mean, they expect that. I think people are shocked to find out that, in fact, this happens. Robin Kemp is just one example, but to find out that, there are judges that oversee these trials and they don't actually have the training in sexual assault. But the law is one thing. The other is the rape mythology, the stereotypes, where you hear these kinds of commentaries. That's just lack of understanding about the issues. And training goes a long way in explaining these kinds of issues. And I think it's the least that we can expect. And this is one area in which Parliament does have an opportunity to make a difference. Look, right now the only criteria to become a judge is that you've sat for 10 years or that you've been a lawyer for 10 years. That's in the Judges Act. But the whole point of the Judges Act was to create the criteria. So there's no reason why we can't add that, add an amendment to the Judges Act to ask lawyers who want to become judges that they meet this kind of criteria. I think it's expected.
Thank you. Can you outline perhaps some of the specific changes that you would want to see or hope to see result from this training in terms of how a judge presides over such a case as what we're talking about today?
Well, I think well, one of the things I would say, I'd ask the committee if you do have a chance I know you have witnesses coming, is to talk to them about their interaction, because with the Judicial Council and others who put together the training for both lawyers and for sitting judges, my understanding right now is that there really is no interaction and there is no transparency. We can't even see the kind of training that's offered at this point. And so experts have said, can we at least, look at it and give you some advice on whether or not this is the most up-to-date, best kind of training. And I think that would be a great step in the right direction, is for the training to actually be transparent, and that they are willing to work with experts, because a lot has changed over the last number of years in the area of understanding the impact and trauma of sexual assault, and even just how sexual assault victims go through the experience, how they report the experience. A lot of times they report it by way of sound and, what they hear, not so much, in a linear way. So there's all kinds of ways in which we could, I think, raise awareness and understanding in those who deal with victims of sexual assault, to understand why they are reacting the way they react as they go through the process. So those are just a few examples. But at the end of the day, I think everybody expects that if you're a professional doing a job, that you should be trained.
Thank you. In your opening statements, you disclosed one anecdote with regards to your motivation for bringing this bill forward. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what you've heard from stakeholders or personal stories that have come forward to you in terms of why this training is so important, why this legislation is so vital for our justice system.
Well, I think it just takes one comment, like some of the high-profile comments that we've heard, to make, victims decide that this isn't the system that, this isn't a route that they're going to take. And it was already bad enough before social media, but now it's widespread. Some of these comments are widespread, and just imagine the impact it has on a victim who's thinking about reporting. We already know that we have issues, at the policing level, just in terms of training. But when a victim goes through all of those steps, and then to go through the court process and the trial process, it is a re-victimization, and it takes a lot of courage to do that and go through the process, and then to think that you might be in front of either a prosecutor or a judge who doesn't understand the law and might use a comment like that really at the end of the day is about attacking the character of the complainant. So there's I think I just think, to be honest, this is ridiculous that we have a situation where people aren't trained and they're dealing with issues like this that are extremely traumatic for people. So it's timely. It's timely. And I saw an article the other day of someone wrote that these kinds of issues should be left up to judges to make the decisions. They're human beings, and if they're not, we see these kinds of issues. And again, I go back to the only reason we actually know about some of these cases is because there happens to be a reporter sitting in the courtroom. Because again, this issue of often these are oral decisions, not written decisions. And when they're oral decisions, yes, they're transcribed. But if you want to get that, access to that document, usually you have to go through the FOIP process. You have to pay for it. It's cumbersome. And so if you're even trying to do research on the the accumulation of these kinds of comments, there's a woman, I think it's Dr. Craig at Dalhousie, that has spent a fortune just trying to accumulate the kind of information and research that goes to make the case that we need better training. So we need to see more written decisions, more transparency, and frankly, the Judicial Council should just step up and say we're going to have better training, it's going to be transparent, we're going to work with experts to make sure it's good, and we're going to mandate it.
Very good. All right, we'll go to Ms. Malcolmson now for 7 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. And thank you to MP Ambrose for bringing this forward. On the New Democrat side, absolutely. We've been calling for some time for that federal leadership that would try to bring some uniformity to how every element of the justice system interacts with sexual assault victims. And we've certainly been hearing a lot of testimony at this committee in a whole range of areas that victims have a very uneven experience. Thank goodness for the Globe and Mail also for really blowing the alarm on the rate of unfounded sexual assault cases. I'm going to talk just for a minute about my own riding. It turns out that Nanaimo, where I'm elected, has the lowest rate of unfounded cases in the country. And so only 4 out of 114 allegations were dismissed as unfounded, and the fantastic NGOs in my community think that their work has something to do with that. Well, actually, I'm extrapolating that. They're not bragging quite that much. But they have the Haven Society and the Women's Resource Center and the Family Access Center in Nanaimo. They've all worked together to partner with the Nanaimo RCMP. The RCMP, which in British Columbia, police services are delivered by RCMP. They attended an orientation. They believe victims because of the training that they've received. They've also worked together to establish a community coordination for domestic safety, which includes Crown, corrections, everybody that has some handle on the justice system within the city of Nanaimo all works together, and they also have a domestic violence unit, which is a formal partnership with the RCMP. So it's getting good results, working together, and having a consistent approach to training. So I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about how a model like that might give us hope that training also at the judicial level might get us better results, better justice for victims, and a better experience so that victims of sexual assault are more willing to go through the process in good faith. And what you can tell me about how the experience of frontline organizations might be able to inform that training that you'd like to see delivered.
Well, first of all, thank you for the support of the NDP, and particularly thank you for the support of your leader, Tom Mulcair, who has been instrumental in supporting this bill and moving it forward. I can't thank him enough. He was amazing to help out, and I know how important it is to him and to your party. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the reason your NGOs, and I'm sure the police in your riding would say the exact same thing. The reason it's working is because of partnership, and because they're learning from one another, and the police want this kind of support. They want this kind of help and training. There's no doubt about it. And they are equally as frustrated. And I've spoken to, a number of police who say, they do all that hard work to get it to the next stage. And then they deal with some of these issues themselves in the courtrooms, and they see it all fall apart for victims that they're trying to support. So it's at every level. And it's wonderful that in Nanaimo there's such a partnership. But these organizations on the front lines know the issues. They know them firsthand, and they're the ones who have been part of a lot of the good research, and they've developed good training over the years, and they know what works. And so it just makes sense. And that's why, my hope is that when you have witnesses come forward, that we find a way to, when we talk about this kind of training, that not only do they have access to see the training that's happening, but they have some kind of role to play in either helping develop the training or even just being able to comment on the training and give advice about the kind of training that people are taking. Because right now there is training available, but it's minimal and it's not mandatory, and it doesn't go into the depth that we expect it to. So I think we're very thankful for those kinds of places where those partnerships work, and sometimes it takes a leadership from an NGO, takes leadership from the police to create that. But we need to see that across the whole country. I mean, there's, some statistics show that 1 in 3 women will, suffer sexual violence in their lifetime. And when you think of the unfounded cases, I mean, that really blew everyone out of the water to see those numbers. And so here's the police faced with that. I think, some police forces have said they're going to review these cases again. Okay, but now let's look at them with we need a fresh set of eyes is good, but a really trained, educated, and aware set of eyes is even better. And so here's a great opportunity to get the organizations like the ones that you work with and I've worked with in my lifetime to come and help. And they're so willing to do that. So I think, this is a good opportunity for people to come together and talk about what this training needs to look like. And it's not just at the judicial level, it's at the police level as well. And I know you and I have talked about, what can we do? I've posed the question, I think, twice now to the Minister of Public Safety about, at least in the federal realm, what can we do? Can we have mandatory training for RCMP? Is there something we can do to increase the level of understanding, at least in the RCMP? But this is a conversation that we need to be having at all level, because, look, I mean, it's 50% of the population, and we're talking millions of women that are impacted, and the impacts the effects on women, it's mental health, it's, effect on their career, on their relationships. I mean, it is, this kind of trauma lasts a lifetime.
I'll maybe just in the final moments, just reinforce, the NGOs have filled this gap because of a failure of federal leadership on both parties' parts. So we want to make sure that they are supported in engaging in this process and funded to be able to give the kind of critique and constructive input that we'd like to see. And that, just to echo some of the concern that I've been hearing, I mean, general support for the direction that your bill is going, but definitely want to make sure that this does not become kind of the inside, what's viewed as a failed system so far as supporting victims of domestic violence, that the training does not inadvertently reinforce bad practices in the past, that we really open the training up. Now we're talking more about implementation. I'm presuming this bill is going to pass, but look forward to further conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Me too.
And now we will go to my friend Ms. Dumas for 7 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Ambrose, for being here and for bringing this bill forward. And as you had mentioned, our committee recently studied this issue and came up with what I'm really proud of, recommendations for the government. Our government is also really committed to this issue. Our Minister for the Status of Women is also the first full minister for the status of women, and she's been traveling the country working on a gender-based violence strategy, as you know, and so it's something that we're quite committed to. With regards to your bill, the preamble talks about the judge's interpretation of the law, but I want to talk a little bit about the actual appointments, because I see extraordinarily poor judicial appointments as a real issue. I mean, one of the things that we did since taking government is we reconstituted the Judicial Advisory Committee. So it's unprecedented now in its diversity. It has 70% women, and for the first time ever, they're receiving training on diversity, unconscious bias, and assessment of merit. So when we look at former Justice Robin Camp, I mean, he admitted that he had very limited knowledge of criminal law. His background was in bankruptcy and oil and gas. And in 2014 was when he made the statement that the victim should just keep her legs together or sink her bottom into a bathroom sink to avoid being raped. So that was in 2014, and yet former Minister of Justice Peter MacKay appointed him to serve in the federal court in 2015, and that was after he made those statements. So, I mean...
Are you suggesting that Peter MacKay is responsible for that? Look, these are grown people who accept an appointment after applying and going through all kinds of an application process. The least we could expect is they don't make comments like that. And when they do, no matter if a Liberal appoints them or a Conservative appoints them, they should be held accountable. And right now we don't have a system that does that. It doesn't matter what government's in power. The judiciary does not have enough accountability on these issues, and that's what this bill is about. It's not about assigning blame to any particular Minister of Justice.
But I'm just wondering how he could even get appointed to the federal court after making those comments.
As I said, first of all, You know, they go through a process. I am not going to sit here and defend any judge. And believe me, I would watch your comments, because you have no idea what some judge might say or has said or done that your government might appoint. These people are supposed to be capable of the job.
I agree with you, except that I would hope that any appointments would be looked at after making comments like that about a woman.
And that's exactly what I hope we do here.
Okay.
That we ask every single lawyer, and I should ask you, has your Minister of Justice asked every single person that she appointed in the last number of months, did you take comprehensive sexual assault training? I haven't asked her that, because I'm hoping that we can pass this bill and we can move forward together. It's not about assigning blame. It's about everyone taking responsibility. And I think these judges, the training is available. They can take it, but they're not. And this is the problem. So we're trying to hold them accountable to a certain extent.
I agree with you. I mean, but except the Judicial Council said in former Justice Camp's case, in these circumstances, the impact of an after-the-fact commitment to education reform as an adequate remedial measure is significantly diminished. So,
well, again, I would ask you, is every single person that's been appointed to the bench since your government took office, was the question asked?
I don't know, but
right.
I can find out.
I'm not expecting, I'm just saying, I'm not here to assign blame. What I'm here to say is, look, we can make the system better.
And we agree on that, 100%.
So let's do that.
In terms of the training, I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about what we can do about sitting judges then.
Well, you know, we worked really hard to make sure, as I mentioned before, that we didn't infringe on judicial accountability because the constitutionality of it. And we wanted to make sure that this bill could pass and that it would be viable, and that we could also make it effective and try to effect some change. And so that is why we target lawyers, and the criteria for a lawyer to become appointed to the judge, to the bench by the Justice Minister. And that this criteria would then be, as I said, they would have to meet the criteria to that they would have had comprehensive training in sexual assault law. And furthermore, the reporting mechanism for sitting judges. We're not directly telling the Judicial Council that they have to mandate training, but we are trying to affect some level of accountability and transparency by making the case that they make the type of training known very transparently, because right now we don't, that we would know how many cases a judge, how many trials a judge would oversee before receiving the training, and how many judges have received the training. And that's about as close as we could come to imposing some level of transparency and accountability without infringing on judicial independence.
So will your bill be able to deal with poor judicial appointments like those that were made, like former Justice Camp?
There are mechanisms for that, and you saw that take effect. Obviously, when a judge makes a bad ruling, or there's issues, there's reviews, and there's a process. This is about training for judges.
Okay. I only have 20 seconds left, so.
Go to Ms. Vecchio for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for appearing today in front of our committee. Last week it was really interesting because I was actually at a grade 10 class, doing a civics class, where we were discussing the report and about young students 1 in 4 having a sexual assault case in the first 8 weeks of going to school. And we got into the judges, and we started talking about the judges. And I don't believe many Canadians, because I know the teacher who is very up on what goes on in Canadian law, he could not believe that Canadian judges were not already in the field of understanding sexual violence when appointed to the bench. And I explained, you could be a bankruptcy lawyer, you could be, you could be somebody who does real estate law, you could be any of those things. So I think it's really, really important. But recently we have seen the province of Ontario coming out, I think it was March 15th, and I was really, and this is how the conversation continued with the students. And they were concerned too. Why would we see some provinces say we're not going to make this happen when we know that we have had cases where it's very obvious that because of the lack of training and the lack of understanding, that we aren't appointing or we're not getting the best results or the for the judicial system. So what do we do with some provinces that do not want to do this? And I recognize that we're talking about specifically new judges here, which is great, but those current judges that are sitting on the bench, is there anything that we would be able to do, or is that going to be 100% provincial jurisdiction?
Well, I think one of the things that we can do without infringing on judicial independence is to advocate that and put pressure on the judiciary and on even governments, sitting ministers of justice, for instance, in the administration of the court. I think there's nothing wrong with shining some light on whether or not the Chief Justice is assigning trials, sexual assault trials, to a judge who doesn't have any training. And the more transparency we can, I think, impose on, and the more pressure that we can put on the provincial system, I think, is helpful. And advocates are already doing that. There's a lot of advocates that have picked up on this bill and have started to put pressure on provincial governments. But I've had very good conversations with Premier Christy Clark, who's very supportive of this bill and is looking to see what she can do at the provincial level. Premier Brad Wall, I've had conversations with Premier Brian Pallister. I've also had conversations with leaders in the Atlantic region, and I've sent either a letter or spoken to every single premier, and also letters to all of the ministers of justice and attorney generals about how this can be done without infringing on the judicial independence, and why this would be important. It's as simple as amending the criteria.
So much. And you had, at the very beginning in your comments, you talked about the Court Watch program, and I think that must have been a fascinating time. What were some of the things that you did see during your time as a student, looking at what happened in the courtrooms to some of the issues? And when we're also looking at this bill, I'm going to do this twofold. There has been talk about, will this make it biased towards the complainant rather than the accused, and what are some of the things that we should look at there, and if you could talk about the Court Watch program and why this is really balancing the judicial system rather than putting it towards one side.
Well, to expect that people that are involved in the justice system have the appropriate training seems like a no-brainer to me, and that someone would say that somehow this would bias the system is ludicrous. We're talking about basic knowledge of the law in sexual assault, and then furthermore, a level of comprehension and understanding around rape mythology and stereotypes, language, all of these things. And it's not present right now, and I think I've spoken to a lot of people in the system who welcome this, who think this is a wonderful idea. It's a long time in coming, and that this will be a good thing. And that's, judges, lawyers, police, advocates. So I can't see why we wouldn't do something like this. But no, it's not about creating bias. It's about creating a more informed and an educated, trained, and a more transparent system. On the issue of the Court Watch program, that was just an example. I've done lots of advocacy work in my life, but that just happened to be one project I was involved in. And every single case that we set in on, we heard things like that, particularly around sexual abuse cases. And some of those stereotypes still, they're still prevalent. And that's the problem with stereotypes and myths. Unless you learn differently, you bring that to the courtroom. People bring that to the courtroom. So I think training goes a long way, and that's what this is about. It's about making our system more transparent. It's about making our system more, and really, to be honest, for me, it's about building confidence. Women do not have confidence in our justice system when it comes to sexual assault law.
Very good. All right, we'll go to Ms. Vandeveld now for 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Ambrose, and I appreciate very much your evident understanding and appreciation of the severity of this issue and the systemic barriers that women are facing in the judicial system. And also thank you for your acknowledgement of this committee's report on violence against young women and girls. I'd like to, first of all, before I get to my questions, go to something that you said, that you've been advocating on this since you were in grad school. And you were the Minister of Status of Women. Your government was in power for 10 years, and you just said that it didn't occur to you that judges weren't getting training. But it's been in the media, there have been advocacy groups that were pushing for this for a number of years. Was it never considered in your government over 10 years, in the previous government, to act on something like this?
As I said, I started researching. I was a minister for 10 years. I didn't have a chance to do a private member's bill. I worked in the area of ending violence against women my whole life. But after this research project that I did at university, I didn't turn my attention back to training of judges until the last few years that I've been the leader of the party and an MP again. When I had an opportunity to have a private member's bill, I started to look at ways to amend the criminal code around sexual assault. And the more, as I said, the more research I did, the more I realized that our laws were robust. So I started to turn my attention to how can we make the system better. And the truth is, there is a widespread consensus now that the way to make the system better is through education and training. And it's very basic. I mean, this is a very basic thing for us to be able to do. And it's timely. I mean, I truly believe it's not just advocates anymore. It's people in the judiciary as well who welcome this change. So I think it's timely.
Then you would also welcome then in Budget 2017, in addition to, of course, the gender-based violence strategy, $100 million. That includes the creation of a Centre of Excellence to address gender-based violence, and also $2.7 million targeted towards supporting the judicial education, ethics, and conduct relating to gender and diversity. So can we count on your support for those measures in the budget?
I think those are great measures, and one thing I spoke with Sheila about is that I hope you consider when you talk to some of the experts in training that perhaps some of that $2.7 million can be used with some of the NGOs who have the opportunity or really want the opportunity to give advice on how that training should look.
Okay. I'd like to just pick up on Ms. Demoff and some of the things that she said. And you talked about the need for change in the system. We have implemented, in terms of the criteria and appointment of judges, an independent judicial advisory committee. That committee has 70% women on it, and it also is going to only look at merit-based appointments. They are provided training on diversity, unconscious bias, and assessment of merit. So just going back to the fact that the previous government appointed somebody who was on the public record as having told a woman to keep her knees together. This change in the system, this independent merit-based system that takes into consideration all of these issues, do you think that kind of an appointment would happen under the current system that our government implemented?
There's a very good chance it would, because look, there was a judicial committee there before, and it wasn't, MPs sitting on it. It wasn't partisans sitting on it. It was made up of independent members as well. And it's all well that the people sitting on your Judicial Action Committee have diversity training, but we still haven't amended the Judges Act to make sure, or I don't see in the application form a specific question being asked of everyone who is going through that committee that they've taken comprehensive training on sexual assault law.
And actually, in the very premise of your bill, which I all agree with, I think this is the minimum that we can do. Training is the very foundation of that. The fact that people do need training, including the people who are appointing the judges. I think that I would very much like to think that at minimum there would be a Google search to see what kind of statements judges have made before a minister would appoint someone like Justice Camp. But I think that at this point, having that training is just as important for the judges as it is for the people who are selecting the judges. Wouldn't you agree?
Look, I think the more training, the better. But at the end of the day, I've seen people be appointed who come with incredible CVs, and then they do things that surprised everyone. So it's not enough. It's just not enough, because you can't control who applies. You can't control the pool of people that apply. And you're not necessarily going to get people who have strong criminal law backgrounds. So at the end of the day, regardless of who gets through those committees, we need them to have training.
Yeah, and I think
they need to have the training, because they're the ones that are not being held accountable when it comes to the training part of this.
Yeah, and I think we all agree on the training. We definitely need that, and we appreciate that you brought that forward.
Very good. Now I think we've got 5 minutes left. We'll go to Ms. Harder.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to split our time. Ms. Ambrose, I'm wondering if you can comment on, right now, there's been a bit of a stall out in terms of appointing judges. And that, in addition to a lack of training, it would appear to me that both of these things would have quite an impact in terms of hearing these cases adequately. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, there's a number of factors, but yes, we have had not only are a number of the judicial action committees not constituted or took a long time to constitute, there's also a lack of judges having been appointed. So yes, we've seen a number of cases be dismissed for very serious issues. And obviously that's a big concern for people who are seeking justice in the courts. But, to the point that everyone wants to see this happen, but we just had a slate of people appointed. And did they all take training? I don't know. And so the goodwill is wonderful, but we need to get this done so that it's clear that everyone gets the training. These are different kinds of cases. It's the reality is the kind of trauma that that women go through, and women and men that go through, that deal with sexual assault and sexual abuse cases. This kind of trauma lasts a lifetime, and the least we can expect is that when people go to court, that they are in front of a judge who has the adequate training and understands, especially the stereotypes and the mythology around these issues.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. There was one comment also. You got it indicated that you would like to see written rather than just oral presentations on what their judgment's going to be. One of the concerns is that that's going to delay time, that they already have enough work. I think there are quite a few holes right now and a few gaps in those being appointed. But why is it necessary, and why do you think the best thing to do is have it in a written response rather than just oral?
Written decisions are of higher quality. That's the bottom line. When a judge, like any person, has to write out their arguments, they do it in a more thoughtful way. The hope is that they'll use more thoughtful language, because a lot of times when we see these things happen, it's in oral decisions. And another issue is complainants want to have a record of the decision. We've heard from various advocacy groups who emphasize how important it is for complainants to actually have a copy of the decision. So currently, if a judge gives a decision orally, a complainant leaves the courtroom with no record of what they've just been through. And obviously the traumatic nature of the proceedings, complainants just want to be able to review that, especially after the fact, when they can process it a lot of times more easily. And when they do, the complainant has to, when they do want to have access to an oral decision, they have to jump through all kinds of hoops, and it's also costly to get a copy of the trial. That's just one issue, but it also is about increasing transparency. When a decision is written, it's much more accessible in terms of how it's available to even researchers, not just complainants, but researchers, advocates, academics who are trying to do work in this area. And it also remembering, as I said early on, sometimes the only reason we know these things are happening is because the reporters in the courtroom heard it and wrote it down. And so written decisions also ensure that decisions can be scrutinized by the public and the parties to the case, that they can be scrutinized. And this is an area where we need more scrutiny. There's no doubt about it. So I think there are concerns about written decisions being more costly. My hope is at least we have more written decisions. And if that is a huge cost burden, then at least that oral decisions be transcribed and readily available, that you don't have to go through a FOIP system or a freedom of information, and that you don't have to pay, particularly the complainant having to pay to get access to this, to these records and decisions. So there's ways in which I think we can make the system much more accessible and transparent.
And as you're indicating, I think a written decision will also make sure that the person speaking are going to be much more thoughtful with their comments, especially to the victim and to the accused as well. So I think this also deals with that issue of those harsh words that may have been said in the past, that now that it's got to be on a piece of paper that can be distributed to every media source throughout the world, that they're going to have to be much more accountable as well. So,
Funny how that happens.
yeah,
But it does.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, I just want to thank you, Ms. Ambrose, for bringing this bill forward. As you've heard from the committee, when we brought our report forward on violence and taking action on violence against women and young girls, we saw the need for better training from the start of the process to the end, and so we thank you for your time today. And at this point, we're going to suspend to go into a steering committee meeting, but if I could just ask members of the committee to remain seated for a minute or two after we suspend. I believe there are people that are at the back that want to take pictures of our wonderful committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the members of the committee for all your hard work in this area. And I want to just wish you all the luck when you're have your witnesses here, and thank you for considering this bill. I know it's not just important to me, but to a lot of women out there, so thank you very much.